Today, obviously, you unveiled the National Petroleum Master Plan. What's your vision? What are you going to be doing?
We are going to be looking at the key infrastructure constraints as far as the petroleum industry within Kenya, and as well it affects the region is concerned, and look at how we as the national oil can come in to address those. So for example, we are looking at building a second petroleum jetty, a floating jetty, also known as a single buoy mooring. We are also looking at setting up strategic petroleum reserves, and we are also looking at setting up infrastructure for purposes of setting ourselves up as a country to be a petroleum trading hub.
National Oil Company, your market share stands somewhere in the region of 9.3%, so there's still a great scope for growth. But growth in this kind of environment, for instance, where you've got established players, the Kennel Cobbles and many other multinationals in the retail space, how are you going to go about it?
Two main ways. Number one, we have a brand that has tremendous goodwill among Kenyans, and anywhere that we have opened up our retail outlets, we have seen tremendous response from the public. So we believe there's still a lot of scope and room for us to grow. But also, the companies that have been here in the oil industry have very much been focused on the conventional areas, the urban areas, the peri-urban areas. There is a huge part of Kenya outside the normal urban and peri-urban areas that is still not served by adequate petroleum infrastructure, and we intend to go into such underserved areas and service them.
Are you going to be doing it independently, or are you on an acquisitive drive? Because we have seen some of these multinationals that I'm talking about, companies like BP, for instance, selling off a lot of their retail assets in Southern Africa and in East Africa because they're just not profitable.
We are going to do both. We are open to opportunities. So as they come, we will look at what makes sense for us and we will move in that direction. We are growing through our own constructions. We are going through local acquisitions, but we have also acquired retail outlets from some of the multinationals that have previously exited Kenya. So we are open to all opportunities in that regard.
Now, we do know that Kenya is a net importer of fuel, and to a large extent that's really what's created this unprecedented situation of inflation that we're seeing right now. With the Kenyan shilling also being very weak, it's made it very costly to import fuel. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword what you're doing. Your hedging strategy in the midst of volatile global markets and the fact that Kenya is quite susceptible to what happens internationally.
Indeed, and we think this is the right time to set out on an expansion plan, because the reality is that the current appreciation, for example, of the dollar, what we are seeing with the T-bill rate, is not going to be the situation in the long run. And yet, as a country, we have a very ambitious and aggressive vision 2030. For it to be realized, it's going to need adequate energy. So we must ensure that even during challenging times such as this, we are preparing ourselves to maximize and the opportunities that will be there when things come down.
Obviously, you expect petroleum demand to grow in the next 20 years as the economy grows, as you've just suggested. But we also know that Kenya is on a drive to pursue a greener agenda, energy efficiency, those kinds of things. How is that going to impact on your business? Because in the long term, petrol is not necessarily going to be the solution.
Indeed. There are lots of other energy sources that we all need to look at. But the reality is that our current situation as a country is that petroleum only accounts for about 21% of the primary energy source. We still have at least around 68% of energy coming from biomass, from charcoal and from wood fuel. So even as we seek to develop infrastructure for petroleum, the gap that needs to be addressed, including through cleaner energy sources, is still quite significant. We believe there is a lot of scope for growth in all those areas.
And finally, Sumayya, obviously you're talking about your expansion and growth strategies in Kenya. Are you looking at the broader East African community region?
Absolutely. Kenya is very uniquely positioned geographically. We are almost halfway between North and South. We are the gateway into East and Central Africa, and any infrastructure we look at developing must serve not only our needs as Kenya, but also those of the region.